It's so important to us to teach our children language, right? And language is huge, especially the English language and all the different things that something could mean. It's a dicey, dicey thing. And when we get into gender, we're talking about other dicey things as well. But we need for our children to begin to identify what gender somebody is so that they can get to using appropriate pronouns down the road. So if they're looking at a little girl, that they notice if it's a little girl so that they say she. And if they're looking at a little boy, they're starting to say he. But there's a step before that where we start to identify whether somebody is a boy or a girl. And it's hard. And there are all different kinds of words that we're going to use to identify what gender someone is. This is a case where it's really important for you to state your own preferences, because there are lots of different ways that you can teach these lessons. And it's one of the things I like to talk about with ABA is that it's not one size fits all, that you're really tailoring lessons to the way your family moves through the world and the kinds of things that you want to teach. So a couple of first points that we want to talk about with gender: decide your preferences. I remember when they were teaching this to my son and they said, okay, so when we get to teaching about the difference between men and women, do you want for women to be identified as ladies or women? And it was a big discussion in our house about which one do we want. And of course, eventually you're going to teach everything so that your child understands and can use all these terms, but you want to start with what the family preference is. And there's no right or wrong answer, right? That I know some families that say gentlemen and ladies, and we decided that we would like for them to be men and ladies, that we would teach women later on. And women, by the way, is a much harder term because it's woman and women. It's really hard. So that's one of the reasons why we decided to go with ladies. And I love it when ladies are called ladies. Maybe that's old-fashioned of me. But in any case, you want to decide your preferences. What are your beginning targets? And later on, you're going to expand it to a lot of different things, but you got to start someplace. We're going to start with matching if it's appropriate for the child. If the child already is starting to identify genders, then maybe we wouldn't do matching. But for children that we're beginning to identify gender and use it in a language sense, we're going to start with matching. It's going to make it easier for the child. So maybe we have a cartoon card that's got a little girl, and we're going to go with stereotypes. And I know it's going to drive everybody a little bit crazy, but we have to start to identify things. So we start with stereotypes for gender. And then trust me, as your child gets older, I have deep conversations with my son that he has seen people on the street that are wearing all different kinds of things, and Halloween was a very interesting time, and he has seen people that are transgender, and we have conversations about all of that, but we start with the stereotype and work into things that are less stereotypical, right? So you might have a picture of a little girl with a hair bow in her hair, and she's wearing a skirt, and you think to yourself, all right, well, how many, lots of little girls who don't wear skirts, but we're starting with a stereotype. And we have another little picture of a little girl with a skirt, and we're matching to the same ones, right? Eventually we would match to little girls who aren't the same and wearing the same clothes. Same thing with the little boys, and working I see somebody has written in a question about pronouns. We'll get to that in just a second. But matching the boys to the boys, right? And then we match the men to the men. We can work on this in lots of different ways. And eventually we're going to start with this matching, and then we're going to move to receptive, then we're going to move to expressive and tax and interverbals. And we'll be talking about all those terms this week, but we want our child to be able to use the term boy and girl and male and female and man and women or woman and lady or ladies in all kinds of contexts. We want them to be able to express it, and we want them to be able to understand it when somebody else says it. We want them to be able to point things out, and we want them to be able to answer questions having to do with, is that a boy or a girl? So we've got one of the early lessons in here. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, this is one of the more advanced lessons. They're working on the interverbal. Interverbal is when you're asking a question and answering. So in this instance, the parent or teacher says, is mommy a woman or a man? And the child responds, mommy is a woman. And so that's when we've gotten a little bit further along the line. And we have a couple of videos to show you examples of people working in different ways with this lesson with children. So take a look.
Name someone who is a man.
Firefighter is a man.
Wow, good work. Nice.
So you see the reinforcement there. Which one of these is a man? Now, keep in mind that sometimes firefighters are women. So at another point in this lesson, when we're working towards generalization, there would be a picture of a firefighter who's a woman, right? But again, we're going to start with stereotypes because we have to start someplace. But don't think that that's the end. Don't think that you're teaching all these very sexist roles to your child. That's not how it's going to be. You get to continue the lesson until your child has the full lesson, but we have to start someplace. And I understand we have another example too, showing us how we work on gender. Take a look.
Put with lady. You got it! That's a lady! Good job!
And so there you see the matching. So put with lady, and she's holding a picture of a lady, and she has two pictures that are not the same as the picture she's holding in her hand, and has to decide which pile am I going to put these in. There are a whole set of lessons that revolve around teaching gender in a language sense to your children that you can find in the skills program. There's the site that you can go to find them. They're absolutely wonderful. They're a huge set of lessons, and we've just covered a brief amount, but so important that we help our children to learn gender.